So the headlines are bad. More Canadians are so deep in debt, they need to file for insolvency, telling the government, I can't pay all of this off. And it's more Canadians doing this than we've seen in the last 15 plus years.
Canadians are drowning in debt.
Housing and food are expensive.
Coffee, beef, everything's on the rise.
I only shop at Dollarama now.
Everything costs more. How do you bridge that gap? Well, you do it with debt.
And here's what too much debt looks like. Note the part of this from around 2020 on. This group of Canadians at their breaking point, almost doubling in size in just 6 years. And zooming back out, you see the comparison to the financial crisis of 2008, 2009. We're almost at that same level and trending to possibly go even higher. But is this graph as it seems? Are things really as bad as they were almost 20 years ago? Yes and no. And I can show you why. Did you know that when people talk about declaring bankruptcy in Canada, there are actually two kinds of bankruptcy you can declare. There's really bankrupt, and then there's kind of bankrupt, but not really.
There are two types of insolvency proceedings for individuals in Canada. One is the consumer proposal, and the other is bankruptcy.
So the headlines I was showing you earlier, they were all about consumer or personal insolvency filings. That's when people like you and me run out of money and can't pay our debts. And the two main types, actual bankruptcy, where you have your debt wiped clean, but you have to sell a bunch of your stuff, do financial counseling, and wreck your credit score for 7 years or so. Then there's the other type, which is filing for a consumer proposal. It's got many of the same features and downsides as filing for bankruptcy, but with a major difference. You get to make a deal. Your debts get slashed by more than half in some cases, but you have to commit to regular payments. In exchange, you get to retain your assets, expensive vehicles, jewelry, art, electronics, land, investments, inheritances. You get the idea. I explain all of this for two reasons. One, that will become much more important later on. But two, just to make clear that when we showed you this graph and these headlines, they're all talking about these two types of insolvency filings, the really heavy kind and the lighter kind. Add them together, we're at nearly 2-decade highs. But what the simple graphs don't show you is that most insolvency filings are this kind of less harsh bankruptcy. That's the middle line here. You can see, by far, the main way people actually avoid filing for bankruptcy, which is that bottom line there. But technically, you're still filing for insolvency. You're still running out of money, can't pay your debts, and are asking for help. So now you know. That's what's captured in all of these headlines today about consumer insolvencies hitting new highs in Canada. But what's not captured, and this is where I think some of the coverage can sometimes feel a little overly anxiety-inducing, are all of the ways in which we can't just compare today to the financial crisis of 2008, 2009.
Adjusted for population, we are nowhere near where we were in 2009.
Yeah, that's a big one. If insolvency filings today are hitting roughly the same highs as almost 20 years ago, but the overall population today is much, much bigger than it was almost 20 years ago, like a pond with one dead fish is a lot worse than an ocean with one dead fish, right? Well then, so too is it pretty straightforward math to show how over a 3-month period in 2009, this many insolvencies out of this much adult population equals this percentage of the population going insolvent compared to 2026. Fewer insolvencies across a larger population is just this percentage of people hitting rock bottom. Kind of a big difference. Except now you're all like, well, not really, Andrew. 0.15 and 0.11 are still pretty close. To which I say, yeah, if you're a giant, and if you look down at these numbers as just tiny little itty-bitty percentages. But even on a small scale, 0.15% of people having a bad time is still 36% worse than 0.11% of people having a bad time. Just like if I were to ask, would you rather have 15 pianos fall on you from someone's balcony while you're walking on the street below, or would you rather just have 11 pianos fall on you? Yeah, that's what I thought.
there is this resonance with 2009 and the number of filings we saw back then. But it is a different set of factors. A lot of the economic strain that we've found ourselves in over the past 5 or 6 years is a contributing factor. I don't think necessarily need to be alarmist yet at this point, but certainly concerning.
Point being, we should really underline and repeat what this insolvency trustee told us just a minute ago.
Adjusted for population, we are nowhere near where we were in 2009.
But
We are significantly higher than where we were a year, 2 years, 3 years ago.
dun, 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 yes, things are still bad. So this is a good time to circle back to that first graph we showed you. So we now know we can take this comparison to 2009 levels of personal insolvency with a grain of salt. But that doesn't let us off the hook of having to confront this rickety staircase. Insolvencies are up.
In the last year or so, it's been a more rapid acceleration of the numbers of folks that are seeking relief through the insolvency process in Canada.
And in Canada's most populous province, bankruptcies are up. So specifically in Ontario, the type of insolvency where people are having to forfeit sometimes their priciest assets, full-on bankruptcy, where they can't really commit to repaying any significant portion of their debts, those are up in a pretty significant way, about 27% year over year, Q1 to Q1.
We are certainly seeing Ontario getting hit harder proportionally than the rest of the country, presumably because Ontario has a greater manufacturing base.
Canada has been ripping us off for years. Tomorrow tariffs 25% on Canada. Instead of a manufacturing recession, we can have a manufacturing renaissance.
As tempting as it is, there's no one reason that fully explains why Canadians are increasingly finding themselves at this kind of financial breaking point. Our general cost of living, inflation, has soared higher than any of us would like.
Groceries are getting more expensive more quickly than many other items.
It seems everything is getting pretty pricey.
4-person household, including me, and we're all living paycheck to paycheck.
I think we've also accumulated maybe about another 20 years of cost of living and affordability struggles. Back then, it was a little bit noticeable. Now it's almost impossible not to notice.
Plus, the war on Iran, the chokehold on oil, driving gas prices up. That, too, is a pain point where it's hard to be just like, I'll save on gas by only driving half the distance to work today.
You got to buy gas. Right? People got to get to work.
Cost of gasoline has put my fleet cost for fuel up probably by a couple of $1,000s over the last 2 months.
A lot of people are now reaching the breaking point. They just cannot do it. The first month or two when gas prices go up, it's not a big deal. I can jiggle things around. But as it happens month after month after month, the pressure just builds.
It just slowly accumulated. So these things around then, banking crisis, COVID, supply shocks, Russia invasion of Ukraine, closure of the Strait of Hormuz, all of these things are just extra things that where we might normally just shrug them off as, hey, that's a bad week, a bad month, a bad year. It's now, wait, this has been a bad lifetime.
So the worst news is that insolvencies and bankruptcies are up in a way we haven't seen in almost 2 decades.
It is definitely concerning. It's certainly higher than it's been for many years.
The worrying news is that insolvencies are simply a symptom of a deeper problem, a broader economic problem that doesn't exactly look to be going away anytime soon.
I think in the shorter term, we're probably going to see it continue to increase.
But the reassuring news is that we have seen worse. Comparisons, especially to things 20 years ago, are tough to make accurately. So the real test will be in where things go starting now.